In this video, I want to talk about the power of planting a tree. And I suggest that planting a tree could be the most potent thing that you do today, if viewed from a couple of different angles. So, first of all, how much does it cost to plant a tree? It costs $1, and it's that very low price tag, meaning that you can go online in the next 5 minutes, and whether it's the Arbor Foundation or Mr. Beast's Tree Foundation, you can look those all up in seconds. You can actually donate $1 to plant a tree in less than 90 seconds from now. So, costs almost nothing in time, costs almost nothing in dollars. But what do you get when you plant a tree? What occurs? So, the first thing that occurs is cleaner air. Trees produce oxygen, and oxygen, lots of it, is what makes air feel clean. You get cleaner air because trees capture dust, which cleans the air, and they produce oxygen. The second thing you get when you plant a tree is carbon sequestering. So trees take carbon out of the air, out of the atmosphere, in a way that reduces air pollution for the human lung, but also reduces the amount of global warming. So, a pretty big benefit. The other thing that you get with a tree is exponential growth. A tree can double in size in the first few years of planting, for example. And, with a coffee or something else that you could buy with $1, they don't double in size. And they're not very long lasting. A tree has maybe a 30, maybe a 50, maybe 1,000-year lifespan, depends on the type of tree that's being planted. A tree is something that provides more value next year than it did this year, and more value the year after that. Another thing that a tree does is reduce temperature volatility. One of the strange phenomena of camping in a desert, a literal desert, is the fact that you can go from below zero temperatures at night in a matter of an hour to blistering hot temperatures. And the question is, why is it so rapid? And one of the reasons is forest canopy. You see, when the sun shines down on a forest canopy, its temperature decreases in the canopy, and so you don't get the immediate reflective heat. Similarly, a lot of water evaporates from trees. Trees bring up to 1,000 gallons a day of water out into the atmosphere. And they create a fog, a mist, a cloud cover, which insulates against extreme temperature drops in the evening and also softens the light in the daytime. So you get temperature regulation. If you're in the landscape, obviously temperature regulation is a nice thing. You don't want it 40 below zero. You don't want it to be over 100 degrees. You want it to be in a comfortable range. And trees reduce temperature volatility. Now, when you reduce temperature volatility, you do something else. You decrease wind speeds, because wind is generated by hot air rising rapidly and cool air needing to come in from the side to fill the void. Well, when hot air rises rapidly because there's no plant canopy, then the air coming in from the side comes in rapidly to fill the void rapidly. And you get tornadoes, you get windstorm, you get hurricanes and typhoons. And when you get hurricanes and typhoons and windstorms, you also get flooding. You get damaged buildings. You get trees blown over. Now, each of those has ecological cost. The trees blown over, massive ecological cost. The cars washed away in a flooding. They all have to be rebuilt and reshipped using what? CO2. There's an economic hardship, of course, that comes from higher insurance premiums, higher feelings of risk, less willingness to take risk in other areas because you have risk outside on the physical level. Low temperature volatility, slower winds, less ecological and financial damage. Now, the next benefit is creating soil. Plants create soil in the process of growing, decaying, and providing humus, organic matter, from the dead former plants that allow more plants to grow more lushly. If you plant a forest and come back 500 years later, there will be more organic matter and topsoil in the forest than existed before the forest was planted. If you strip away the forest through clear cutting and maintain a barren soil, the baked and frozen soil becomes dead. There's less organic matter to feed it. So it's a less living soil without the regular replenishment of organic matter. That's the first thing. The second thing is, without the roots of plants and with the higher winds that come with temperature volatility, a lot of that soil blows away and the remainder washes away. Now, when soil blows and washes away, it goes to the low points in its airborne travels. When a flood washes away topsoil, it washes it to the bottom of the mountain. It washes it into the valley. It blows it into the valley. So what you get is deforested mountains with less ability to plant trees in them, because the soil is washed away. But you also have a secondary problem, which is polluted streams and rivers, because what is in the valleys but the waterways? So now you have soil clogging the waterways. Now, what happens when soil clogs the waterways? fish and fish population, salmon, for example, cannot be as healthy or cannot make it their way back to their spawn points because the rivers have been clogged up. They've gotten too muddy and shallow. That's one problem. Boats, if they're boating rivers, have trouble, and the rivers have to be redredged, which is an expense. So you have soil going away from the area that it's needed, and it's ending up in the area that it's a problem. So then you have dredging expenses. When this happens in farming areas with chemical fertilizers, you also have algae blooms in the rivers and lakes, which suck up all the oxygen and kill all the fish in that way. And the final thing is you have this soil and fertilizer going out, running into the oceans and the bays, at the bases, in the basin of the river. And at this point, you have ecological problem of algae, etc., going into the ocean water, and you have dirtier and muddier water. Now, planting a tree for $1 gets rid of all of that, tree by tree. And it might be useful to understand that in order for you and I to live this lifestyle, the lifestyle of video cameras, the lifestyle of an internet, the lifestyle of YouTube, the lifestyle of synthetic fabrics, the lifestyle of clothes, the lifestyle of electricity, the lifestyle of living in houses, of driving in cars. In order to make room for the roads that you and I drive upon, trees are cut down. In order to make room for the houses that you and I live in, trees are cut down. In order to mine the petroleum that makes the various things plastic in our life, trees are cut down. In order to produce electricity, if it's in coal plants, you have things like acid rain, and trees die. Our lifestyle, in order to use toilet paper, in order to use paper, in order to use a bus, in order to make asphalt, in order to mine steel, trees are cut down. And so, as a result of you and I existing for roughly 100 years in our culture today, more than 1,000 trees are cut down. The equivalent of, if you take the 1,500 tons of CO2 that the average American is going to generate into the atmosphere over the course of a lifetime, you come up with an amount of CO2 that takes a certain number of trees planted in order to offset. Now, the wonderful news is that for $1 a day, for about 3 years, you can offset your carbon, your topsoil, your temperature volatility, your contributions to storms, runoff, your contributions to dirtier air, to faster global warming, to melting ice caps. You can reduce that for $1 a day for 3 years. In other words, 1,000 trees. 1,000 trees planted over time as they grow and mature, many of them dying, and as is the case in nature. That's why you have to plant 1,000. Many of them dying, but over time, you can offset your carbon emissions. If you plant 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 trees. For only $3,000, you can have a net positive impact when it comes to carbon erosion, water purity. I didn't even get into the tremendous amount of wildlife and bird habitat that comes in a landscape that's covered in trees. In the link below, you'll find a nonprofit way that we can help award those who want to become carbon neutral or carbon negative. Simply send us a receipt for the planting of 1,000 trees, and you can get the Carbon Neutral Award today. Send us a receipt for 1,000 trees or more, and you can get a carbon negative certificate. Want to do it for your company? Calculate your employees and some of the activities that you do at work. For each employee, contribute enough for 1,000 trees, and your company can be carbon neutral or carbon negative. It's one of the most powerful and efficient things that we could possibly imagine. And it's one of my personal pleasures. The reason I did this is I want to enjoy life knowing that I'm giving more back to my ecology than I'm taking. And having planted more than 1,000 trees, I have that experience, and I value it. Hi, I'm Dane Rose. All knowledge begins with a paradigm, and out of that paradigm comes an idea, an awareness that we adopt, reject, or synthesize into something better. It doesn't become wisdom, it doesn't become useful until we take action, until we integrate it into not only our thoughts, but our feelings, our body, our words, and our way of being. For that to occur, we have to move from the passive media paradigm into more active engagement. In the link below, in the More Information section, is an invitation to join a very small, deliberately filtered, high-quality discussion with a group of people who share a common language and want to work with these ideas, with me and with one another, with the sole goal of creating 10 times more sustainable well-being for ourselves and those around us per unit of energy invested. Thank you for watching.